And welcome to Hannity. And tonight, special counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway, will join us. But first, Democrats and the alt-radical left are pouncing on the resignation of Donald Trump's national security advisor, retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. But there's a major part of this story that the mainstream media will not tell you about. And what's really going on here is what tonight's opening monologue is all about. So liberals, they're predictably wasting very little time trying to create a political firestorm over Flynn stepping down. Let's be clear. It was wrong that Flynn misled the president and vice president about his phone call with a Russian ambassador. He owned up to it. He did the right thing. He stepped down. But there's something much bigger here and much darker going on, and that's been part of the alt-radical left and their master plan to damage and destroy the president, Donald Trump, and, frankly, as collateral damage, anyone connected to him. This is about the left willing to do anything to stop President Trump from draining the swamp and changing the status quo and all the bureaucracy in Washington. And that means the media bureaucracy, that means the liberal bureaucracy, the lobbyist bureaucracy, etc. The D.C. swamp is rising up. They're colluding and viciously fighting to take down the 45th president and his entire administration. It's that serious. Now, the alt-radical left is hell-bent on annihilating everybody around the president, from his top advisors like Kellyanne Conway, Steve Bannon, Reince Priebus, Steve Miller, even Dr. Sebastian Gorka, to even the president's own children, including the media's attacked his 10-year-old son.
Mike Flynn was already a very divisive and unusual choice for this job because it's kind of a consensus building position, and his background is really as a hothead. He's already a kind of a divisive force within this White House.
So, Stephen Miller, let's take you to class for a second here, because I know you didn't go to law school. I don't know what type of school you went to, but they certainly didn't teach you civics. You're unworthy to be in the White House. You're unworthy to be in government if that's what you believe, unless it's Vladimir Putin's government.
Saturday Night Live really did portray him just about as he is. I mean, he is an embarrassment even to Trump. And so I don't know how long he's going to last.
It's a stunning thing that a white supremacist, Bannon, would be a permanent member of National Security Council.
See this? One by one, in true Saul Alinsky form, the left and liberals in the mainstream media have been systematically going down the line of people close to President Trump and trying to take each and every one of them out. In Rules for Radicals, Alinsky explained exactly what we're seeing. Quote, pick the target, freeze it, personalize it, polarize it. Well, that's exactly what the left is doing, and now they smell blood in the water. And their ultimate target is, of course, the president himself, Donald Trump. That's why Democrats and the alt-radical left and the media have brought up the subject of impeachment already. Take a look.
Let's not forget that there wasn't just one call to the Russian ambassador. There were 5 calls to the Russian ambassador. Treason's greetings. General Flynn wasn't acting alone. He wasn't going rogue. He was doing what his boss ordered him to do. And as for the Flynn investigation, it's going to turn into Flynn-peachment sooner rather than later.
I have led in talking about impeachment. And some people say, well, it's too early for that. It's never too early if you understand how dangerous this man really is.
They might try to wipe all this communications but clean, but those communications exist. They exist, and they will come out. And once they come out, I guarantee you Republicans are not going to stand by when impeachment is put on the table.
You know, in 2008, before Obama was even elected, the guy that ultimately would become the ambassador to Russia, he actually went over there, visited, and talked to them. Impeachment of the president is clearly the end goal for the left. Facts, truth, doesn't really matter. Mike Flynn is just a small casualty of that bigger plan. Now, the left is trying to make what happened here into the next Watergate. But we have to remember that these are the same liberals who fiercely defended Hillary Clinton, ignored and defended the massive private server scandal. Remember, top secret and special access programming in the closet of a mom-and-pop shop bathroom. They ignored and defended the corruption, the pay-to-play at the Clinton Foundation. They ignored and defended Hillary Clinton's endless lies. And the left was also noticeably silent back in 2012 when President Obama, remember, he was caught on a hot mic saying this to the Russian prime minister to send a message to Vladimir. Remember this?
This is my last election, basically. Yeah. After my election, I have more flexibility. Yeah. I understand. I transmit this information to Vladimir.
Yeah, tell Vladimir more flexibility. Don't tell the American people. That's selective moral outrage and hypocrisy of the worst kind. So what we're seeing playing out is what Eli Lake, who will be here in just a few minutes with reaction, described in an article earlier today entitled, quote, "The Political Assassination of Michael Flynn." Now, in it, Lake points out that it is so extremely rare for reporters to be told about government-monitored communications of private citizens, which is what was leaked to the press about Flynn's call with a Russian ambassador. Lake then notes, quote, "Normally, intercepts of U.S. officials and citizens are some of the most tightly held government secrets. This is for good reason. Selectively disclosing details of private conversations monitored by the FBI or the NSA gives the permanent state, the bureaucracy, in other words, the power to destroy reputations from the cloak of anonymity. This is what police states do." It's no secret that Flynn had a very rocky relationship with the national security establishment and members of the Obama administration. He's even said that he was previously forced out of the government for daring to speak up about the threat of radical Islam and questioning the narrative being put out by the Obama White House. Now, on top of that, the endless leaks about the Trump administration is so serious that the House Intelligence Committee chairman, Congressman Devin Nunes, is now asking the FBI to launch an investigation into where are these leaks coming from. And as our own Catherine Herridge reported earlier, when Flynn was asked if the leaks were targeted, coordinated, and a possible violation of the law, he said, quote, "Yes, yes, and yes." Now, nobody in the media is telling you that. Ever since Donald Trump ran for president, there's been this liberal witch hunt. They're salivating. There's a sense of urgency. Nobody connected to him is off limits. They want everybody. Even his 10-year-old son, the media has attacked. His daughter, Ivanka, going after a woman. She's been viciously attacked. And now there are boycotts against her clothing line. The media's gone after his son, Eric, and his charity, which has donated a lot of money, millions, to St. Jude's Children's Hospital and research. But after pressure, Eric was forced to shut it down. They even went after Don Jr.'s kid recently in New York about a school that he goes to. Now, those are just a few of the examples. Here now with reaction, our Bloomberg View columnist Eli Lake, who I just talked about, Circa News national security correspondent Sarah Carter, and New York Post columnist Paul Sperry. I want to go to you, Eli, and start with this because, first of all, the political assassination of Michael Flynn is a pretty provocative title here. Normally, intercepts of U.S. officials and citizens are some of the most tightly held government secrets for good reason. Selectively disclosing details of private conversations monitored by the FBI and NSA gives the permanent state the power to destroy. This is what police states do. The permanent state, define that.
Well, it's the national security bureaucracy. It includes everything from the administrative side of the Pentagon, elements of the sort of career military, the CIA, the FBI. It's the people who would have possession of these kinds of intercepts, and we trust them. It is a public trust that this stuff does not get out into the public willy-nilly, because when you kind of selectively disclose it, you can ruin someone, because it's an extraordinary power to be able to listen to someone's phone calls or read their emails like that.
Yeah, and I think what's really important here is this is, I have two articles here. One is by Kenneth Timmerman. He wrote a book back in 2007 called Shadow Warriors about the intelligence community and the damage that they can do. And there's a Time magazine piece by Sam Frizzell. All of these leaks, ever since Donald Trump got in the picture, you're saying to the country tonight, this is unprecedented. Not unprecedented, this is not common.
The last time I can remember anything like this happened was in 2009. It was about Jane Harmon. A lot of the press did not pick up that story. It was in CQ. But, we almost never see this kind of thing because it's not just U.S. citizens, it's also U.S. officials. This is the kind of thing that happens in banana republics when the national police will go after a political leader that they don't like and using these extraordinary powers. And we trust the NSA and the FBI to use these powers to catch criminals and terrorists, but that should not interfere in our politics. And that stuff is interfering right now in our politics because Mike Flynn was President Trump's choice.
There's no other way we could have gotten that information if it weren't leaked from somebody in the intelligence community. Again.
Well, no. I mean, the question really is. The other thing is this. Most senior officials who have high clearances can't see the names of the people in these intercepts.
All right,
so
Sarah,
that's the other thing. Yeah. They're redacted.
What a great point. Sarah, I saw you shaking your head.
Yes. I mean, Eli brings up several very important points here. And I think, even more so, not just what happened with Lieutenant General Mike Flynn, but think about this. They exposed an operation on the Russians as well as other state actors. They said, hey, we're monitoring all your phone calls. Your cell phone is wiretapped. Your landlines are wiretapped. What are the Russians going to do? They're going to toss their phones. They're going to up the ante. They're going to tighten their belts, and they're going to find out how to fix their phone lines so that we can't monitor them. There are people within the U.S. intelligence community that I've spoken with today and yesterday that say there should be an investigation because basically they've been burned.
They've
so
been
people
burned
within
big time.
their own.
And a
yes,
violation of law, Sarah, this is what you do.
And
this is
a complete violation of law, of federal law. So you got leaks. You've got 9 people leaking to the Post, others reading transcripts on the phone. So there needs to be an investigation into this. This is bigger than what everyone's seeing. I mean, imagine this. Right now, the Russians, other state actors like Iran, Syria, everybody is just burning all of their phones. They know that the NSA has the capability to get into those scrambled phones.
That's scary. Because in many ways, Eli's conclusion may be right then. If people are doing that, that is insidious and in many cases could be outright evil. Paul Sperry, before I get to you and your column, let me play Sean Spicer from earlier today talking about this very topic.
The idea that not just in this administration, but the Obama administration, going back to the Bush administration and back, that we have an issue where classified information, of which this would be, is handled in such a way that it is being given out. And I know in some cases it's a good story, and I understand that, and that's to some degree your responsibility to write that. But I think there's also a story here with the amount of leaks that are coming out of people that are entrusted with national security secrets and classified information are leaking it out. That's a real concern for this president, that when he's talking on the phone with a world leader, that when he's making key decisions that are in the interest of protecting this country, that we have to wonder whether or not people who work for our government, who are entrusted with classified information and decisional-based materials, are leaking that information out. That, I do believe, is a big story that should be reported. I also believe that the president is rightly so very, very concerned about this because it's not just something that is plaguing, the current situation, but it goes back through the Obama administration, the Bush administration, the Clinton administration. When we have government employees that are entrusted with this and then leak it out, that undermines our national security.
Now, Paul Sperry, you wrote, as you're a columnist for the New York Post, and you wrote a column that was extremely disturbing, if true, how Obama is scheming to sabotage Trump's presidency. Do you see any connection here? And explain what you mean.
Well, I mean, Intel has been politicized. There's no question about that, to delegitimize, undermine Trump. And that goes back to December. But these other protests against Trump and also Republicans in these town hall meetings, Obama and his organizers, turns out, are behind those protests. They're not spontaneous. They're being organized.
Do you think some in the intelligence community could have leaked this as supporters of Obama, holdovers, or maybe permanent bureaucrats?
Quite possibly. In the case of these marches and these other protests, these are being organized by a group founded by Obama called Organizing for Action. It's a radical Alinsky group. It's got a lot of money, and they're training an army of agitators to sabotage Trump and his policies, while at the same time protecting Obama's legacy, like Obamacare and the Dreamers. And here is OFA listed prominently on Obama's new website, OFA Organizing for Action.
Wow. So you think it's a lot deeper. I think we've got a long way to go. It sounds to me, based on what all of you are saying, and you are all experts in national security issues, that we need an investigation where these leaks are coming from, because it seems like this is political and it's damaging a lot of people, and that's the other side of the story that I think a lot of people are avoiding. Guys, good to see you all. Thank you for your insight. Good columns today from both you guys. And coming up next, right here, tonight on Hannity.
As time wore on, obviously the situation had become unsustainable.
Kelly,
and General Flynn.
That makes no sense.
Members of the mainstream media, shocking, they're attacking Kellyanne once again. She'll join us from the White House. And later, Rick Grinnell, Charlie Hurt, Nancy Soderberg react to Michael Flynn's resignation. That and more tonight on this busy news night right here on Hannity. And welcome back Back to Hannity. So earlier today, Kellyanne Conway was verbally criticized while attempting to discuss the resignation of Mike Flynn. Watch this.
You're saying that was the straw that broke the camel's back, but the White House knew about that last month when the Justice Department warned the White House that Mr. Flynn or General Flynn had not been completely honest in characterizing that conversation with the Russian ambassador. And they even went further to say that as a result of that dishonesty, he was at risk for blackmailing by the Russians.
Well, that's one characterization, but the fact is that General Flynn continued in that position and was in the presidential daily briefings, was part of the leader calls as recently as yesterday, was there for the Prime Minister's visit from Canada yesterday. And as time wore on, obviously the situation had become unsustainable.
Kellyanne,
General Flynn...
That makes no sense.
All right, joining us now with reaction from the White House, counsel to the president, Kellyanne Conway. You know, just one observation, and we've been friends for over 2 decades. I've seen you on media appearances, and just my own thoughts that if somebody was a liberal and a woman and were treated in certain circumstances the way you've been treated, I think it would be news. Do you feel in any way the media has been extremely hostile to you?
I don't like to think that way. I am counselor to the president. I get tough questions. Any of us who represent him do. He certainly does. And tough is fine, but they should be fair. And actually just saying that I made no sense or it made no sense is inaccurate and unfair in this instance because, as our press secretary, Sean Spicer, said later in the daily briefing today, Sean, our White House counsel reviewed that information and concluded that this was not a legal matter. And ultimately, it was a matter of trust. It was an erosion of trust matter. It was not a legal matter that warranted further action at that moment. And so that's all I was trying to convey. And I was answering a couple of different questions, but I do find sometimes that there are conclusions in search of evidence. And you know, if we don't answer the question the way they want it answered, they ask it again, accuse us of not being credible or not answering a question. Look, sometimes you're asking a question that's not particularly relevant, but we're patiently trying to answer it. And often enough, we are answering the question, but maybe not just the way that you wanted it answered. But I'm not a big fan of talking about sexism and exclusion and all of that.
No,
I'm here
I know
to
you're
do
not
a job.
identity politics.
But I also think things started to shift too when I was a speaker at the March for Life. I saw a real change in tone and attitude among many people that, you know, I would go and speak at the March for Life, and of course Vice President Pence did as well. And he made history doing that. But that's all right. Sean, you know what? I just want the American people to see all the action this president is taking on their behalf. I mean, just today he had a listening session, a parent-teacher conference with parents and educators from private schools, public, charter, home schools. We have a new secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs. We have Linda McMahon over at SBA. She was just sworn in tonight. Steve Mnuchin last night at Treasury. The president just today, he rescinded some of these awful regulations in a really remarkable,
I do think there's some truth
event.
here.
So,
you know, one of the things, there's been a remarkable speed. I call it the speed of Trump, actually. He's moving very quickly, and he's made a lot of accomplishments. But the media, as I said in my opening monologue tonight, they're more focused on attacking you and attacking Ivanka and Jared and Bannon and Miller and Gorka and even the 10-year-old son of the president. I want to go specifically to these leaks, though, because Time Magazine had it was a column today by Sam Frizzell. You know, this is not the first time leaks are coming from the intelligence community. Our friend Kenneth Timmerman actually wrote a piece. He calls it, he wrote a book back some years ago about the Shadow Warriors. And Eli Lake, by the way, he wrote a piece today about the intelligence leaks. So my question to you is, where are these leaks coming from? Are they against the law? Is this, do you think, coming from people that are loyal to the former administration? And when does it stop because of the danger that's associated with these leaks? And is there going to be an investigation?
well, the president made that very clear, I think, in a tweet and in other comments. The press secretary made it clear today. We're very concerned about leaks, particularly as goes intelligence and security information. And it's extremely concerning. It's not for me to say where they're coming from or whether there'll be an investigation, but it's obviously taken very seriously by our commander-in-chief and our president, because he has said as much as recently as this week. And he's right, Sean. We saw this before. We're seeing it again this week. The leaks within the intelligence and security, leaks about intelligence and security, I should say, it should concern everyone. And if people are running to the media to leak and not providing that information to the proper authorities, that should concern all of us. This is not a partisan
dangerous.
issue.
Kellyanne, that's
it's dangerous stuff. It's not.
dangerous.
It's not a partisan issue. And when you I appreciate your opening questions to me as well, because all I see constantly is, whether it's any Trump administration official, it's so-and-so got grilled, so-and-so struggled, so-and-so contentious interview, see the tense exchange below. It's like, I guess that's great clickbait, but folks, let's focus on the real issues at hand, which is what the president is putting out there, these leaks.
Well, let me ask you one last question, because I know that you made an off-the-cuff comment. It was on Fox and Friends, and you talked about, and I do believe, I have friends inside of Nordstrom that told me that they believe it is political, what happened with Ivanka's line. And you said, okay, go buy Ivanka. And they're claiming that you violated the standards of conduct. I mean, is this really how trivial things are going to get? And what's your reaction to it?
I don't have a comment on the particular letter that's been sent or any type of investigation. And I've been very straightforward about that particular incident. And I'll leave it at that.
All right, Kellyanne, thank you for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And up next, we'll get more reaction to Michael Flynn's resignation, Rick Grinnell, Charlie Hurt, Nancy Soderberg. They'll join us, and then later tonight.
That's your point of view, Sean.
Wait, hang on a second.
But that's not the reality.
Here's the reality. This is the truth. Radical Islamists are at war with America. Last night, I went one-on-one with Jorge Ramos about the immigration crisis in our country. Later tonight, Geraldo Rivera, Bo Dietl are here with reaction as we continue.
The president was very concerned that General Flynn had misled the vice president and others. He was also very concerned, in light of sensitive subjects dealt with by that position of national security advisors like China, North Korea, and the Middle East, that the president must have complete and unwavering trust for the person in that position. The evolving and eroding level of trust as a result of this situation and a series of other questionable instances is what led the president to ask for General Flynn's resignation.
All right, that was White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer earlier today talking about retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn's resignation as National Security Advisor. Here now with reaction is former spokesperson for the U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Fox News contributor Rick Grinnell, Fox News contributor and opinion editor for the Washington Times, Charlie Hurt, and former Deputy National Security Advisor for President Clinton, former UN Ambassador, and the CEO of the Soderberg Global Solutions Group, and that's Nancy Soderberg. Good to see you all. Nancy, are you at all concerned, one intelligence leak after another? You concerned about that?
I always am. This has so many different levels to it. One, why were they listening in on Flynn's conversation with the Russians? They briefed the White House, so you don't know whether it was someone in the White House, someone in the Justice Department, somebody who told somebody who leaked it. I think there will be real investigations. But this is going to quickly shift from Flynn's resignation to what kind of White House does President Trump want? There's, someone described it to me today as a Game of Thrones going on there. You've got two chiefs of staff. There's not, one side's not talking to another, and he's got a little war going on in there, and he's got to lead and decide what he wants to empower.
I think there's growing pains with any administration.
Absolutely.
And we've seen this in all past administrations, in all honesty. Rick, let me go to you from the standpoint of the intelligence aspect of this. And that's got to be troubling. This is not the first time. This is now the seventh time that major things are being leaked. That's against the law, number one. Number two, that's got to be troubling to any American citizen that their government is the one that's listening in on them and leaking it.
Yeah, it's really troublesome. And look, we've had a growing problem with politically motivated intel officers. Let's be very clear. Most of the intel officers are great Americans working very hard. But there are some who are more loyal to a political party. They were gaining ground during the Obama administration. But frankly, the Obama team didn't really crack down because most of the leaks benefited them. But with the election of Donald Trump, this has been blown wide open. We now have politically motivated intel officers leaking information about the president's calls. I mean, look at what was spun when the president spoke to the Australian head of state. It is really outrageous to have this activity going on in our intel community. We're not going to see the press crack down on this, frankly, because they benefit as well. Congress has a special responsibility here. They need to step up, and there needs to be some mature congressional representatives from both sides of the aisle to go in and crack down and start firing people who are leaking this information about U.S. officials.
Charlie, I guess the next logical question here is, okay, he didn't tell the whole truth to the vice president who asked him. The White House counsel said nothing illegal was done here. I mean, you're talking about a 1799 act that they're referring to, the Logan Act, that nobody have ever prosecuted under. So there's nothing criminal. They told them that, and then they spent a couple of weeks finding out what had truly happened and investigating it, and it results in an issue of trust, but based on leaked information. So what does that mean for the Trump White House?
Well, you know, obviously the Trump administration is dealing with a lot of, bureaucrats, people that are clearly leaking, not only for political purposes, but also specifically targeted at Mike Flynn with an effort to try to discredit him and to try to get him kicked out of the administration. That's a really huge thing. And I think it's important to remember, you know, as you pointed out.
Do you agree with me that they're going after targeting one by one everybody around Trump, and their ultimate goal is to get him?
They don't have to do it. They're doing it to themselves. Mike Flynn lied to the FBI. That's what's being investigated here. He apparently told the FBI a lie, which is a felony. So they're doing this
and so did Hillary Clinton, with all due respect. Hillary Clinton lied a lot.
I'll go one thing in the past.
And the media was not as hysterical about it.
Obama actually did prosecute leaks more aggressively than anyone else.
Okay.
It's interesting.
But the person most responsible for the biggest risk of national security was Hillary, and she got away with it, and the biggest pay-to-play.
Let's agree to disagree on that point. But on Flynn, I think there is an issue here of whether he lied to the FBI.
Well, I don't know.
There is to focus on the leaks here is not the main issue.
Let's also look at the underlying crime. You look at what Flynn supposedly did in terms of violating the Logan Act versus what what Hillary Clinton did after Benghazi. There's no comparison.
Nobody's making that
so
comparison.
Much more egregious.
The Logan Act, I agree. I've been on presidential transitions. Everybody has those discussions that no one was going to prosecute Bill Flynn for talking, Mike Flynn for talking about that. As in everything, it's about the cover-up, not the original sin. Had he been honest, we wouldn't have this mess.
And that's what the Trump administration said. But if the intelligence didn't get leaked, we wouldn't be here at all. Guys, good to see you all. Thank you. And coming up next tonight on this busy news night right here on Hannity.
That's your point of view, Sean.
Wait, hang on a second.
But that's not the reality.
Here's the reality. This is a truth. Radical Islamists are at war with America. Jorge Ramos and I had a very heated one-on-one debate last night about illegal immigration. We'll get reaction from Geraldo Rivera, Bo Dietl, and also later tonight.
We will defeat radical Islamic terrorism, and we will not allow it to take root in our country. Not going to allow it.
President Trump, he's not afraid to use the term radical Islam, and now a former State Department official is explaining why the phrase was never used during the Obama administration. You want to hear what it is? Straight ahead. And welcome back to Hannity. So last night I went one-on-one with Univision news anchor and Fusion host Jorge Ramos in a debate about illegal immigration. Take a look at this.
The same country that gave me all the opportunities that my country of origin couldn't give me now is treating other immigrants in this discriminatory way simply because they were born in another country. I mean, 16 attorney generals don't agree with you.
Even though we know they have a connection to terror.
Madeleine Albright don't agree with you. So you might think that you are right, Sean, but many people think that what Donald Trump is doing is really undermining the national security of the United States. That's your point of view, Sean.
Wait, hang on a second.
But that's not the reality.
Here's the reality. This is a truth. Radical Islamists are at war with America. Here with reaction, New York City mayoral candidate Bo Dietl and Fox News senior correspondent Geraldo Rivera. To me, it's simple. Geraldo, even you have finally come around on the wall. As long as it has a door, you want the door.
A door, but there's a fundamental problem. When you consider that Latinos are 18% of the U.S. population, citizens,
and growing,
18% and growing, the largest minority group in the country. There is no one on the Trump cabinet, no one who at a high level in the Trump administration who is Latino. To me, a lot of this is people now fearful, for example, of these immigration raids. They're fearful because no one is there to calm things down.
What are you insinuating, though? Are you insinuating that there's racism, that you want identity and racial politics?
I'm insinuating nothing. I am stating for a fact that when you have 1 out of every 5 Americans who is a member of a particular ethnic
group.
If you would have voted for him, you could have been. You wouldn't be there right now.
Yeah, you could have been. And they are unrepresented. That's probably why you have some of this problem.
Yeah, but you know what?
It's a failure of communication.
I don't understand something.
And it tells too much about.
This was put into play
attitudes.
a long time ago when they're rounding up these gang members that were involved in shootings and rapes and everything. And we're going out there, ICE is doing what they're supposed to do, round them up and ship them out. I don't understand why the left, real left, all of a sudden is so upset about it. We want to get rid of illegal criminals. I don't want to get rid of families that are here together.
Do you know the definition of criminal alien according to the Homeland Security Agency when asked? Anyone in this country illegally is a criminal alien. When you have a definition that broad, you're not talking about drug dealers and domestic abuse.
You know the president. You know the president's not using.
Apricot pickers.
You're talking about the president's not using that definition. He's making a distinction about those that commit crimes after they're in here. He's made that distinction.
I have not heard him. I have heard him suggest
he's softened.
That dreamers are further down the line. Now he softened as I softened, so that's good. There are dreamers. He postpones the dreamers. But why not just say that when I say criminal alien, I mean drug dealers and
he's been saying
MS-13
that. He does say
members
that.
and
honestly, fairness, he does.
I think this last 350 or whatever it was, these are really gang members, really people involved in criminal activity.
In Elmhurst, Queens, yesterday, they rounded up a whole bunch of people. They weren't gangbangers. They were here
Geraldo,
without documentation.
Geraldo, last night, what I showed Jorge Ramos in the lead up to our discussion, I sat, you know how many times I've been down at the border, and I almost traveled as much as you. But I went down there all these times because it's important. And I saw the drug warehouses, and I saw the criminals and gang members being arrested, and I talked to these guys. But I sat through that security briefing with our top guys that are in control of the border in Texas and the Rio Grande area. 642,000, they put it up on a screen, crimes committed against Texans alone in a 7-year period of time, including, not the majority of, including some rapes, including sexual crimes, including murder. And to me, it's like, why risk one American life where we can secure the border, vet people before they come in, and if they want to be a part of our family, great. If they can't pass the test, too bad.
Nothing you say, I oppose nothing that you just said. What I suggest to the people watching right now is we are in the middle of the largest city in the United States, 8.5 million people. In this, within 40 miles of the Empire State Building, there are 1.25 million undocumented immigrants. You never hear about them. Why do you never hear about them? You never hear about them because they're not the rapists, they're not the drug dealers, they're not the stick-up men, they're not the killers. They live low-profile lives.
If you lost one of your kids,
they babysit, they mow the lawn.
I actually agree with Geraldo. With the 11 million illegals in the country, I really believe the majority of them are hardworking people that want to do the right thing for their families. I'm talking about. I'm for totally the criminal element. Bye-bye. Get rid of them. Throw them through that door, and that's it.
That's what President Trump said.
And I think he's come back. You know, Trump has come around. When he first talked about he was going to deport 11 million people, he's backed off it. Now we're going for the criminal.
Just be clear when you say I'm not after Guadalupe. I'm after
Who's Guadalupe?
Guadalupe is a 36-year-old mother of 2 citizen children who was deported. She came here at the age of 14. She was deported.
Oh, I thought that was an old girlfriend of yours.
It's a pretty long list. It could have been. You can name a lot of names.
I figured it was a Guadalupe somewhere along the way.
You can't undermine my argument.
Right.
You attack
when we come back, we got this coming up next on Hannity.
We will defeat radical Islamic terrorism, and we will not allow it to take root in our country. We're not going to allow it.
President Trump is not afraid to call out our enemies, but the Obama administration, they refuse to use the term radical Islam. Tonight, we have a good idea why. We'll explain as Hannity continues.
Radical Islamic terrorists are determined to strike our homeland, as they did on 9/11, as they did from Boston to Orlando to San Bernardino. To these forces of death and destruction, America and its allies will defeat you. We will defeat them. We will defeat radical Islamic terrorism, and we will not allow it to take root in our country.
That was President Trump pledging to crush radical Islamic terrorism. On the campaign trail, Trump was highly critical of President Obama and Hillary Clinton for refusing to say the words radical Islam. Well, in an op-ed for the New York Times, former Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs, Richard Stengel, he tried to explain the Obama administration's aversion to calling radical Islam by its name. And he wrote, quote, to defeat radical Islamic extremism, we needed our Islamic allies, the Jordanians, the Emirates, and, of course, the Egyptians and Saudis, and they believe that term unfairly vilified the whole region. Here with reaction from the Islamic House of Wisdom, Muhammad Ali Alahi, former Marine, Steve Gurn, Act for America President Brigitte Gabriel. You won't even say, you've been on this show, you won't even say the words radical Islam. Why not? Because it's true. There are people that say in the name of your religion, in the name of Allah, it's become a worldwide problem, killing in the name of religion. Allahu Akbar.
Is it a new name? It used to be Al-Qaeda and Taliban and then ISIS, and now we call it radical Islam. We don't have such a
heading because there are so many radical Islamic groups.
Some those who claim to be Muslim but not radical Islam, some Muslims who might be radical or they are radical, like those who are supported Takfiri and Wahhabi from Saudi Arabia. But the point is that the same president was saying
Is Iran not radical? Is Iran not a radical?
You see,
the number one state sponsor of terror in the world.
Iran is the one who's fighting ISIS. Is radical to fight ISIS? Is radical
really?
to fight
And the Iranian mullahs throwing gay people off
who
homes?
Is it that Iranian in the last 3 years in this
You're
country?
Defending Iran? You're defending the Iranian revolution and the treatment of women?
I am defending anyone who contribute to our civilization. You know
and you're saying the Iranians, the number one world sponsor of terror.
The last 3 years, Sean, do you know the last 3 years, more than 3,000 Iranian students got PhD in this country and serving this country. Is that radical?
I don't know how you don't see that it's not radical. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, it's completely all over the Middle East is being destroyed.
Anything radical, we are against it. Anything radical, we are against it.
But how are you against it? I don't understand.
What about radical Christianity? You're the one who killed the 6 Muslims in Canada. We don't talk about the religion. Was it radical or not?
Of course there is radical Islam, and the audacity that he's calling the Saudis radical, but he doesn't call the Iranians radical simply because he's a Shia. He cannot call his own people. So when we talk about what you said in the opening segment in the New York Times article that it was an Obama policy, we do not want to offend our friends in the Middle East, such as Egypt, by calling the radical Islamist, because the previous administration, Obama, was friends with the Muslim Brotherhood, who are the real radicals, and he was trying to please them. Mubarak, the moderate president of Egypt,
why is there mysterious reluctance and resistance of the Imam and others to identify what is a worldwide threat? Radical Islamists, they also kill a lot of Muslims. They're all over Europe, all over America. We have seen the devastation of evil in our time, which is radical Islamic terror.
It is. They kill other Muslims because they believe if other Muslims do not basically walk the same path that they walk to, that there should be.
Can I say something?
Can I say something? I got to go.
One word. Bridget, you came to this country the same time I came to this country.
And we will unveil our new segment. It's called the Hannity Hotline. You talking to me. Uh-oh. Who knows what's there? Straight ahead. All right, time for our question of the day. Do you think the left is trying, especially the alt-radical left media and all of those maybe in the intelligence community? Do you think it's Trump they're really after? Go to Facebook.com/Sean Hannity, @Sean Hannity on Twitter. Let us know what you think. By the way, now time to play some of the messages, and I don't know what's coming, that you left for me on the Hannity Hotline. Take a listen.
This is Patricia from Kentucky, and want you to know how much that I appreciate hearing the truthful news from Fox News and from you.
I'm proud of Donald Trump, the way he's representing this country, and I think he's going to do a good job. The president we had in there destroyed this country.
I feel the same way you do, that the liberals court has put our country in great jeopardy of harm with ISIS infiltrating the refugees.
I feel like I don't have a voice, and I finally might have a voice. So thank you for putting this hotline out.
All right, you have something to say to me. It could be mean, nice, maybe to the point. We're going to play some of your comments. Call the number right now you see on your screen, 877-225-8587. Tell us your name, where you live, and we'll be playing more of your calls tomorrow night. That's all the time we have left this evening. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you tomorrow night.